Doctor fires Nanny for dancing for his wheelchair-bound son on the terrace. Her reaction shocks everyone. Michael Johnson felt the weight of every decision he made in his professional life, but nothing had prepared him for the conflict that would erupt in his own home on that sunny October afternoon. The renowned neurologist was used to handling delicate situations, but the anger he felt at that moment was completely different from anything he had ever experienced. It all began when he looked out the window of his penthouse. Down below on the spacious terrace overlooking New York City, the nanny was dancing ballet for his 6-year-old son. Her movements were graceful and fluid, while the boy in his wheelchair clapped and smiled in a way Michael hadn't seen in months. "What is this nonsense?" he muttered to himself, feeling something twist in his stomach. Without hesitation, he rushed down the stairs, his footsteps echoing on the cold marble. When he reached the terrace, the young woman was still dancing, completely absorbed in her performance. The boy laughed and tried to mimic some of the movements with his arms. "What do you think you're doing?" Michael's voice cut through the air like a blade. The ballerina stopped abruptly, her cheeks flushed from the exertion, her dark hair was tied up in a perfect bun, and she wore a light knit dress that allowed for movement. Her delicate features showed confusion at the sudden hostility. "Dr. Johnson, I was just... Jacob needs serious physical therapy, not silly games." Michael interrupted, pointing at his son, who now looked at him with teary eyes. "You're being paid to care for him properly, not to fill his head with false hope." "Daddy, no!" Jacob cried, his small hands gripping the arms of his wheelchair. "Emily was teaching me how to dance." "Dance?" Michael laughed bitterly. "Jacob, you can't dance. The sooner you accept that, the better it will be for everyone." Emily Wilson felt as if she'd been punched in the stomach. At 28, she knew the pain of frustration and limitation well, but she had never heard such harsh words directed at a child. "Doctor, with all due respect, dance isn't just about the legs. Jacob has so much talent with his arms and—" "Enough!" Michael slammed his hand on the terrace railing. "You're fired. Pack your things and leave my house immediately." The silence that followed was broken only by Jacob's sobs. Emily felt her eyes fill with tears, but she forced herself to stay composed. She knelt beside the boy's wheelchair and held his small hands. "Jacob, you're the most talented boy I've ever met," she whispered, ignoring Michael's furious glare. "Never forget that, okay? Emily, don't go." Jacob threw himself into her arms, soaking her dress with tears. "I have to, sweetheart. But I promise you'll keep dancing even without me." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, don't forget to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Emily stood up slowly, avoiding Michael's gaze. Her movements were controlled, almost mechanical, as if she were performing on a stage. She walked into the house and went up to the maid's room where her few belongings were kept. As she packed her things into a small suitcase, she finally let the tears flow. Each item she packed held a memory of the 3 months she had spent caring for Jacob, the miniature ballet shoes she had bought for him, the notebook where she recorded his progress, the drawing he had made of the two of them dancing together. Downstairs, Jacob continued to cry on the terrace, refusing to come inside when Michael tried to persuade him. Mrs. Dorothy, the housekeeper who had worked in the house for 15 years, watched everything with silent disapproval. "Doctor, that girl was a blessing for Jacob," she dared to say, drying her hands on her apron. "It's been a long time since I've seen the boy so happy." "Mrs. Dorothy, I know what's best for my son," Michael replied curtly, but there was something in his voice that sounded less convincing now. When Emily came down with her suitcase, Jacob reached out for her one more time. The young woman hugged him tightly, whispering words of encouragement in his ear. Michael watched the scene from the doorway, fighting a strange feeling he couldn't quite place. "Jacob is going to miss you terribly," Mrs. Dorothy said softly to Emily as she passed through the kitchen. "I'll miss him too," Emily replied, her voice trembling slightly. "Take good care of him for me." In the elevator, Emily finally let herself break down. 3 months caring for Jacob had meant so much more than just a job. The boy had awakened in her a passion for education and therapy through dance that she never knew existed. When she arrived at the small apartment she shared with her mother in Queens, Emily collapsed onto the worn-out couch and told her everything that had happened. "Sweetheart, maybe it's for the best," said Catherine Wilson, a 62-year-old woman who worked as a seamstress. Her graying hair was tied back in a simple ponytail, and her calloused hands showed years of hard work. "Those kinds of rich people never understand what real struggle is. Mom, it's not about money, it's about Jacob. He was making so much progress. Emily, you've always been such a dreamer, ever since you were little with all that ballet talk." Emily glanced at her right leg, hidden beneath her jeans. 3 years had passed since the accident that ended her career as a professional ballerina, but the pain of that loss was still real. Finding purpose in caring for Jacob had felt like discovering a new way to dance. Meanwhile, in the Johnson penthouse, the night was proving harder than Michael had anticipated. Jacob refused to eat dinner and wouldn't stop asking when Emily would come back. Each question felt like a needle pricking the doctor's conscience. "Daddy, why did you send Emily away?" Jacob asked for the 10th time, lying in his race car-themed bed. "Jacob, Emily was confusing you. You need to focus on real physical therapy." "But I like dancing with her. She said I'm talented." Michael sighed, adjusting his son's blanket. The room was spacious and modern, equipped with all the necessary adaptations, but at that moment, it felt cold and impersonal. "Son, you have a special condition. It's important you understand your limitations." Emily said limitations are just a silly word. Those words echoed in Michael's mind, long after Jacob fell asleep. He walked to his study, an elegant space lined with shelves of medical books and framed diplomas. Sitting in his leather armchair, he tried to focus on his reports but couldn't shake the look of disappointment on his son's face. The phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. "Michael." Jennifer's voice, his wife, came through the line. "How's Jacob?" "Asleep. How was the meeting in Washington, D.C.? "Productive, but that's not why I'm calling. I got a strange message from Mrs. Dorothy about you firing Emily." Michael's stomach tightened. Jennifer was always traveling for work as a business consultant, and he had grown used to making household decisions alone. It was necessary. She was filling Jacob's head with fantasies. "Fantasies? Michael, what are you talking about?" She was teaching him ballet. "Ballet, Jennifer, as if he could actually dance." The silence on the other end of the line stretched for long seconds. "Michael Johnson, have you completely lost your mind?" The coldness in Jennifer's voice made Michael straighten in his chair. "What do you mean?" "Jacob told me over the phone yesterday that he was learning to dance and was radiant. For the first time in months, our son was genuinely happy. And you destroyed that." "Jennifer, you don't understand. I'm a doctor. I know what's best for him." "You're a neurologist, not a child psychologist." Her voice rose. "And more importantly, have you forgotten how to be a father?" The call ended abruptly, leaving Michael alone with his thoughts. He stood up and walked to the window overlooking the terrace where it had all begun. The space now felt empty and silent. The next morning, Jacob woke up earlier than usual and immediately asked for Emily. When Mrs. Dorothy explained she wouldn't be coming back, the boy flatly refused to eat breakfast. "Jacob, you need to eat," Michael tried to persuade, holding a spoonful of cereal. "I'll only eat if Emily comes back." "Son, Emily isn't coming back. I'll hire another better nanny." "I don't want another nanny. I want Emily." Jacob pushed the plate, spilling cereal on the floor. Michael felt frustration rising but tried to stay calm. "Jacob, you're being stubborn." "And you're being mean," the boy shouted, wheeling himself to his room and slamming the door. Mrs. Dorothy watched everything while cleaning up the breakfast mess. "Doctor, forgive my boldness, but that young woman was special. Jacob changed completely after she arrived." "Mrs. Dorothy, Did you see how much better he was getting around in his wheelchair? How much stronger his arms were? All of that started after she began teaching him those dance exercises." Michael stopped in the middle of the room. He had noticed those improvements, but had credited them to conventional physical therapy. "Emily disguised exercises as dance," Mrs. Dorothy continued. "It was therapy, but in a way Jacob enjoyed." Those words echoed in Michael's mind all day. In his office, he struggled to focus on his appointments. Every patient he saw made him think of Jacob and the happiness he had taken away. During lunch, he decided to do something he'd never done before: look up Emily Wilson. Typing her name into the computer felt like an invasion of privacy, but curiosity was stronger. What he found shocked him. Emily wasn't just any nanny. She had been a professional ballerina at Lincoln Center, with a promising career cut short 3 years earlier by a car accident. The news articles told of a talented young woman who had lost partial mobility in her right leg and had to reinvent herself. There were photos of her dancing in classical performances, radiant and full of life. But it was when he read her full name, Emily Wilson Harris, that the world seemed to spin around him. That surname? Harris. His first love from his youth was named Catherine Harris. With trembling hands, Michael kept searching. He found an old photo of Emily as a child, standing beside a woman he recognized immediately. It was Catherine, 28 years older, but unmistakably the same person he had loved and abandoned when he was 25. The discovery left him frozen. Emily was Catherine's daughter. The woman he had left pregnant and abandoned under pressure from his wealthy family had raised a child alone. A child who, by a twist of fate, had become the nanny to his own son. Memories flooded back. Catherine Harris, the humble young woman who had worked as a store clerk and studied dance in her free time. They met in college when she was taking a night vocational course. Michael was in medical school, the son of a traditional family of New York City doctors. Their relationship had lasted 2 intense years. Catherine was sweet, talented, and dreamy. She talked about having children who could grow up free to follow their dreams. Michael was passionate about her, but never had the courage to introduce her to his family. When Catherine got pregnant, Michael panicked. His parents made it clear that marrying a poor girl would ruin his medical career. The family pressure was immense. They offered money for Catherine to take care of the problem and disappear from their son's life. Cowardly, Michael accepted the emotional blackmail. He ended things with Catherine cruelly, saying she was just a fling and that he had never truly loved her. The tears on her face still haunted him after all these years. Now, discovering that Emily was the daughter he never knew brought a mix of emotions that left him completely lost. Guilt, remorse, curiosity, and a strange feeling that fate was playing a trick on him. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. That night, Michael barely slept. Jacob kept refusing to eat properly and constantly asked for Emily. With each of the boys' refusals, Michael felt the weight of his decisions growing heavier. The next day, he decided he needed to take action. He called 3 agencies specializing in child caregivers, explaining he needed someone experienced with children who had special needs. The first candidate arrived the following afternoon. She was an experienced 50-year-old woman with excellent references, but Jacob barely looked at her, staying silent and distant the entire time. "Jacob, this is Mrs. Patricia. She's going to take care of you from now on," Michael explained patiently. "I don't want her. I want Emily." "Son, Emily isn't coming back. Mrs. Patricia is very qualified." "She doesn't know how to dance, Mrs." Patricia tried to connect, offering games and activities, but Jacob simply turned his face away and asked to go to his room. The same thing happened with the next 2 candidates. Mrs. Dorothy watched everything with growing concern. "Doctor, Jacob has barely eaten in 3 days. This can't go on." Michael knew she was right. Jacob was clearly depressed, something he recognized as a doctor, but struggled to accept as a father. Then his mother, Barbara Johnson, showed up unannounced. A sophisticated 72-year-old woman with perfectly styled white hair and expensive clothes. She had been the main one pressuring Michael to leave Catherine decades ago. "Michael, I heard you fired another nanny," she said, sitting in the living room with her impeccable posture. "It wasn't exactly like that, Mom. There were incompatibilities." "What kind of incompatibilities?" Michael hesitated. Telling his mother about his discovery would open a Pandora's box he'd rather keep closed. She was being inappropriate with Jacob. Inappropriate how? She was filling his head with fantasies about dance. Barbara raised an eyebrow, her typical way of showing skepticism. And what's wrong with dance? The question caught Michael off guard. His mother had always been extremely traditional and strict. Mom, Jacob has physical limitations. It's not fair to create unrealistic expectations. Michael, are you speaking as a doctor or as a father? Before he could answer, Jacob appeared in the living room in his wheelchair. His eyes were red from crying, and he looked smaller and more fragile than ever. "Grandma," he exclaimed, turning to Barbara with what little energy he had left. "My dear grandson," Barbara hugged him tenderly. "Why the sad face?" "Daddy sent my friend Emily away. She taught me how to dance and was really cool." Barbara looked at Michael with an expression he couldn't decipher. "And you really liked this Emily?" "I loved her, Grandma. She said I'm a talented dancer." "I'm sure you are, sweetheart." Michael was shocked by his mother's response. She had never been like this with him as a child. "Jacob, why don't you go play for a bit while I talk to your father?" The boy nodded sadly and headed to his room. As soon as he was out of sight, Barbara turned to Michael with a serious expression. "Michael, tell me exactly what happened with that nanny." Embarrassed but knowing he couldn't hide anything from his mother, Michael told the whole story. The dancing on the terrace, his overreaction, the abrupt firing. He hesitated before revealing his discovery about Emily's identity. When he finally mentioned the name Catherine Harris, Barbara's face visibly paled. "Catherine Harris," she repeated slowly. "The girl you dated in college. You remember her?" "Michael, how could I forget?" The tone in her voice made him sit on the edge of the leather armchair. "What do you mean?" Barbara took a deep breath, suddenly looking much older. "Son, there are things you don't know about that time." "What kind of things?" "Catherine came to us after you broke up with her." Michael's heart stopped for a second. "What do you mean?" "She was pregnant, Michael. She came asking for help, not money, just guidance. She was desperate and alone." "And what did you do?" Barbara looked away, clearly ashamed. "Your father and I thought it was best not to tell you. We told her you had made it clear you wanted no contact." "You lied? We thought it was for the best. You had a bright future ahead." Michael stood abruptly, feeling sick. "You let Catherine raise a child alone, without even giving me the chance to know I had a daughter. Michael, you were too young to take on that responsibility. That wasn't your decision to make." The argument was interrupted by Jennifer's arrival. She had returned from Washington, D.C. earlier than planned. She walked into the room, luggage still in hand, and immediately sensed the tension. "What's going on here?" Michael looked at his wife, then at his mother, and felt the weight of decades of secrets crashing down on him. "Jennifer, I need to tell you something about Emily." Over the next 30 minutes, Michael told Jennifer everything. His past with Catherine, the hidden pregnancy, the discovery that Emily was his daughter. Jennifer listened in silence, her expression shifting from surprise to shock, and finally to a mix of understanding and disappointment. "So you fired your own daughter without even knowing who she was," Jennifer summarized when he finished. "I didn't know. But now you do. What are you going to do?" Michael had no answer. The situation was more complex than any medical case he'd ever faced. "Jennifer, I need to find Emily," he finally said. "I need to talk to her." To do what? Apologize for abandoning her mother and then firing her for doing her job? The coldness in Jennifer's voice cut deep. She was right, and Michael knew it. "I need to try to fix this." "Michael, you hurt a family twice. First when you abandoned Catherine, now when you humiliated Emily in front of her own brother." The word brother struck Michael like lightning. Jacob wasn't just his son, he was Emily's brother. And she had cared for him with all the love of an older sister, without even knowing the truth. "Where's my little grandson?" Barbara asked, clearly trying to shift the focus of the conversation. "In his room, probably still crying," Jennifer replied curtly. "I'll talk to him." Barbara headed to Jacob's room, leaving Michael and Jennifer alone. The silence between them was heavy and uncomfortable. "Jennifer, I know I made mistakes." "Mistakes?" she interrupted. "Michael, you destroyed a family's life. And now you've discovered that family is tied to ours in a way you never imagined. What do you think I should do?" "First, you'll find Emily and apologize, not just for the last few weeks, but for decades of abandonment. Second, you'll bring her back to care for Jacob, who clearly needs her. And if she doesn't want to come back, then you'll have to face the consequences of your choices. Meanwhile, in Jacob's room, Barbara spoke tenderly to her grandson. The boy was lying in bed, clutching a stuffed bear. "Grandma, why doesn't Daddy like Emily?" "Sometimes adults do things that don't make sense, sweetheart. She made me happy. We danced together, and she said I could be anything I wanted." And she was right. Jacob looked at his grandmother with hope. "Can you bring her back?" "I'll try, my love. I'll try." That night, after everyone had left, Michael was alone with his thoughts. Jacob had only eaten a few spoonfuls of soup and refused to join in any activities. In the penthouse in Queens, Emily also couldn't sleep. The last few days had been a blur of failed job interviews and financial worries, but more than that, she missed Jacob. "Honey, you need to stop torturing yourself over this," Catherine said, serving tea for both of them in the small kitchen. "Mom, it's not just a job. Jacob needs me. There are other children who need help too." "Not like him." Catherine studied her daughter's face. There was something about the intensity of Emily's affection for Jacob that puzzled her. "Why is that boy so special to you?" Emily hesitated. How could she explain to her mother that Jacob had awakened a protective instinct in her that went beyond professionalism? How could she say that caring for him had filled a void she hadn't even known existed? "He reminds me of myself as a child, full of dreams everyone said were impossible. And maybe that's why you connect with him so much." "Maybe." Catherine poured more tea and stayed silent for a moment. "Emily, there's something about that family I need to tell you." "What do you mean?" "Dr. Michael Johnson, I knew him." Emily looked up, surprised. "What do you mean?" "A long time ago, before you were born, I dated him." Emily's world stopped. She set her cup down carefully, trying to process the information. "You dated Jacob's father?" "For 2 years. I was young and believed he truly loved me." "What happened?" Catherine sighed, clearly reluctant to revisit that time. "When I found out I was pregnant with you, I told him. He didn't take it well." "He didn't want children?" "He said I was just a fling, that he'd never loved me and that I should disappear from his life." The words hit Emily like a punch. She began to understand why Michael had reacted so harshly to her presence. "Mom, are you saying Michael Johnson is your biological father?" The silence that followed was deafening. Emily felt as if the ground had vanished beneath her feet. "Why did you never tell me?" "What was I supposed to say? That your father rejected me when he found out you existed? I thought it was better to spare you that pain." "But Mom, that means Jacob is your half-brother." Tears began to stream down Emily's face. Everything was starting to make sense now. The instant connection she had felt with Jacob, the affection that went beyond professionalism, the sense that caring for him was more than just a job. "Did he know?" Emily asked. "Did Michael know who I was?" "I don't believe so. When you told me the name of the family you were going to work for, I was shocked, but I thought it was just a coincidence. Johnson is a common last name." "And why didn't you stop me from taking the job?" Catherine smiled sadly. "Because I thought maybe it was time for you to meet. Father and daughter deserve the chance to find each other, even after all this time." Emily got up from the table and walked to the small window overlooking the busy street below. The city lights twinkled, but she saw none of it. "So, Jacob is my brother," she murmured to herself, "and he clearly loves you. Maybe it's no coincidence you two connected so deeply. But Michael fired me. He made it clear he doesn't want me around. Michael has always been proud and stubborn, but he's also a father, and a father who sees his son suffering will eventually give in." Emily turned to her mother. "Do you think he'll find out who I am?" "Sooner or later he will. And when that happens, you'll both have to decide how to handle it. I don't know if I'm ready for that conversation. No one ever is, dear. But sometimes life forces us to face things we'd rather avoid." The next morning, Michael woke with a determination he hadn't felt in years. Jacob had coughed all night, refusing his medicine, clearly suffering not just physically but emotionally. Dressed casually, he drove to Queens, following the address he'd found in Emily's employment records. The neighborhood was a far cry from the luxurious surroundings he lived in, but there was a vibrant energy in the streets that reminded him of his youth. Finding the building wasn't hard. It was a modest 5-story structure, well kept but clearly humble. Michael climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, his heart pounding. When he rang the bell, it was Catherine who answered. Time had passed, but she was still beautiful, with the same kind eyes he remembered. Her now grey hair framed a face marked by the years, but also a quiet dignity that struck him. "Michael," she said simply, no surprise in her voice. "Catherine, may I come in?" She hesitated for a moment, then opened the door fully. "Emily's in the shower. Have a seat." The apartment was small but cozy, decorated with care and love. Photos of Emily dancing hung on the walls, and Michael could trace the life of the daughter he'd never known. "Did you know who she was all along?" he asked, as they sat in the small living room. "I did. Emily didn't until last night." "You told her?" "I thought it was time she knew the truth." Michael looked around, noticing the details that told the story of a life built with effort and love. "Catherine, no need to apologize," she interrupted. "It was a long time ago." "But I have to. What I did was unforgivable. You were young and afraid. I understand that now. You didn't deserve to be treated that way. And Emily didn't deserve how she was treated last week." Catherine's words hit Michael hard. She was right. He had repeated the same pattern of rejection with his daughter. "Jacob isn't doing well," he admitted. "He's refusing to eat, won't play, just cries and asks for Emily. And what do you want from us?" "I want Emily to come back. Jacob needs her." "And you? Are you ready to accept that Emily is your daughter?" The question caught Michael off guard. He had only been thinking of Jacob, not the complexity of accepting Emily as his own. I don't know. It's a lot to process." "Michael, Emily doesn't need a father who isn't sure he wants her. She's already been through enough." It was then that Emily stepped out of the bathroom, her hair still damp, wearing simple clothes. When she saw Michael in the living room, she froze. "What are you doing here?" "Emily, I need to talk to you." "About what? About how I'm not good enough to take care of your son?" Michael saw the hurt in her eyes and felt the weight of guilt. "About Jacob. He's not doing well. And you think that's my problem?" "Emily," Catherine intervened gently. "Hear him out." Emily sat in the farthest armchair, clearly defensive. "Go ahead." Michael took a deep breath. "Jacob hasn't eaten in 4 days. He won't accept any new nanny. He just cries and asks for you. As a doctor and as a father, I'm worried." "And what do you want me to do?" "I want you to come back. So you can fire me again when something doesn't suit you?" "No. So you can be the big sister Jacob needs." The words hung in the air. Emily looked at her mother, then back at Michael. "So you know." "I found out yesterday, and now I understand why you two connected so deeply." "Michael," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly, "you abandoned my mother when she was pregnant. You sent me away when I was just doing my job. Why should I trust you now?" "Because Jacob is your brother, and because, despite all my mistakes, he needs you. And you, are you ready to accept me as your daughter?" Michael hesitated. The raw honesty of the question disarmed him completely. "Emily, I don't know if I know how to be a father to an adult daughter, but I know I want to try. I know I was wrong with you and your mother, and I know Jacob is suffering without you." Emily stood and walked to the window. "I took care of Jacob because I loved him like a brother, even without knowing he was my real brother. That connection I felt from the first day makes sense now. So, will you come back?" Emily turned to face him. "I have conditions." "Name them." "First, I'm not just a nanny. I'm a dance therapist, and I'll keep working with Jacob that way." "Agreed." "Second, you'll treat my mother with the respect she deserves. She raised a daughter alone after you abandoned her." Michael looked at Catherine, who had been silently watching the conversation. "Catherine, will you forgive me?" he asked directly. "Michael, I forgave you a long time ago. Holding on to bitterness would only hurt me more." "Third condition," Emily continued. "If you want to try being my father, you have to really commit. No half measures or being ashamed that I'm not your wealthy wife's daughter." "Emily, Jennifer already knows about you, and she's on your side in this." "What do you mean?" "She said it was stupid of me to fire you and that Jacob needs his big sister." Emily was surprised. She had expected rejection from Michael's wife. "And the fourth condition? What is it?" "I want Jacob to know the truth, that we're siblings. He deserves to know." Michael nodded slowly. "You're right. Whenever you're ready to tell him, I'll support you." "Then it's settled. I'll come back today." The relief on Michael's face was visible. "Emily, thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Let's see if you can really change." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. Emily's return to the Johnson penthouse was met with an explosion of joy from Jacob that moved everyone. The boy cried, laughed, and hugged his sister as if he hadn't seen her in years. "Emily, you came back," he shouted, clinging to her tightly. "I'm back, sweetheart, and I'm not leaving again." "Promise?" Emily looked at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. "I promise." Jennifer arrived home that night to a scene she hadn't seen in a long time. Jacob, cheerful and animated, telling Emily all about what had happened during the days she'd been away. "Emily," Jennifer greeted her warmly, "it's so good to have you back." "Thank you, Mrs. Jennifer. Just call me Jennifer. We're family now." The words carried a meaning that went beyond politeness. Jennifer was genuinely welcoming Emily as part of the family. During dinner, Jacob barely stopped talking. It was as if all the words he'd held back over the past few days were finally pouring out. "Emily, tomorrow will you teach me that new step you promised?" "Of course. And you're really staying forever?" "Jacob," Michael intervened gently. "Emily is your big sister. Siblings stay together forever." Jacob stopped eating and looked at his father, confused. "What do you mean, sister?" Emily glanced at Michael, who nodded encouragingly. "Jacob, remember when you asked why you didn't have any siblings?" "Yeah. Well, it turns out you do have a sister. I'm your sister." "Really? Really, we have the same dad." Jacob processed the information for a few seconds, then smiled in the purest way Michael had ever seen. "So you're my ballerina sister." "I'm your ballerina sister." "And you're gonna live here with me?" Emily looked at Michael again. "If your dad says yes." "Of course I do," Michael answered immediately. "This is your home, Emily." In the weeks that followed, the Johnson family dynamic changed completely. Emily moved into a room in the penthouse, and her presence brought a lightness that had been missing for so long. Jacob flourished under his sister's care. The dance therapy sessions Emily developed helped not just with his physical mobility, but more importantly, with his self-esteem and joy for life. Jennifer, who had always felt guilty for traveling so much, now felt more at ease knowing Jacob had Emily. The bond between the two women grew naturally, built on their shared love for the family. Michael started attending therapy sessions to deal with his guilt and learn how to be a father to an adult daughter. It wasn't easy, but Emily showed patience with his clumsy efforts. Catherine was invited for Sunday lunches at the house and gradually became part of the extended family. Barbara, initially resistant, ended up charmed by the seamstress's dignity and wisdom. But not everything was perfect. Michael still struggled with guilt from the past, and sometimes it showed in his over-the-top attempts to make it up to Emily with gifts and privileges she didn't want. "Michael, stop trying to buy my forgiveness," Emily said during one of these moments when he tried to give her a new car. "I just want to show you how important you are. You can show me by being present, by talking to me, by learning who I am." "How do I do that?" "Start by asking about my childhood, what dreams I had, what it was like growing up without a father." These conversations were hard for Michael, but necessary. Every story Emily shared about her childhood was a painful reminder of all he'd missed. She told him about the ballet lessons Catherine sacrificed to pay for, the school performances where she'd dance, imagining her father might be in the audience, the nights she cried, asking why she didn't have a dad like other kids. "I always made up stories about you," Emily confessed during one of these talks. "Sometimes you were an explorer traveling the world, other times a soldier defending the country. I never imagined you were here in New York City, living your life as if I didn't exist." "Emily, if I had known, would you have done things differently?" The question hung in the air. Michael wanted to say yes, but he wasn't sure if it was true. "Honestly, I don't know. I was cowardly and selfish. Maybe it would have taken me years to mature enough to be a good father. At least you're being honest. I'm trying to be the father you deserve now. And I'm trying to accept that it's never too late to have a family." Jacob, oblivious to the emotional complexities of the adults around him, simply delighted in having Emily nearby. She had created a special routine for them. Every morning after breakfast, they had a dance session on the terrace. Emily had transformed that space where it all began into a little studio. She hung mirrors on one wall, installed a support bar, and laid soft mats on the floor. Jacob had made tremendous progress in strength and coordination. "Let's work on your arms today," Emily would say, playing soft music. "Can I pick the song?" "Of course." Jacob always chose cheerful, upbeat tunes. He had created his own sequence of movements that blended therapeutic exercises with artistic expression. Michael often watched these sessions from his office window. Seeing his son flourish like that filled him with immense gratitude for Emily. One day, when Jacob was particularly excited, he asked, "Emily, do you think I could dance in a real theater?" "Why not?" "Because I use a wheelchair." "Jacob, remember the story I told you about the ballerina who lost part of her leg and kept dancing?" "I remember. That ballerina was me." Jacob fell silent for a moment, processing the information. "So you lost part of your leg?" Emily pulled up her pant leg and showed the prosthesis she wore from the middle of her right leg down. "I lost it in a car accident 3 years ago." "And you still dance?" "I still dance. Different from before, but I still dance." Jacob gently touched the prosthesis. "Does it hurt?" "Sometimes, but not as much as it hurt to think I'd never dance again." "And now you know you can?" "Now I know I can dance anyway. Standing, sitting, with one leg, with two. What matters is the music in your heart." "I have music in my heart." "I know you do, and it's the most beautiful music I've ever heard." This conversation marked a turning point in their sibling relationship. Jacob began to see Emily not just as a caregiver or sister, but as someone who truly understood his limitations and possibilities. That evening at dinner, Jacob made an announcement. "Daddy, Mommy, I want to do a dance performance." "What do you mean, sweetheart?" Michael asked. "Emily and I are going to perform at the theater, to show that people like us can dance too." Jennifer and Michael exchanged glances. The idea was both thrilling and terrifying. "Jacob," Emily gently interjected, "that would be wonderful, but it would be a big performance with lots of people watching." "I'm not scared, I have you with me." "At an actual theater?" Michael asked. "There's an annual charity event at Lincoln Center," Emily explained. "It's for children with special needs to showcase their talents. I used to participate before the accident." "And you think Jacob's ready?" Emily looked at her brother, who gazed back with hope. "I think he was born ready. He just needed someone to believe in him." The following weeks were dedicated to preparing for the performance. Emily choreographed a special dance that highlighted Jacob's abilities rather than hiding his limitations. Catherine visited almost daily to help with costumes. She had proven to be a talented seamstress, creating outfits that were both practical and elegant. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Michael asked Jacob during one of their rehearsals. "I'm sure, Daddy. I want to show everyone that I'm a dancer." "You're not afraid of making mistakes?" Emily said there's no such thing as a mistake in dance. There are only different ways to express yourself. Michael smiled. His daughter's wisdom was transforming not just Jacob, but the entire family. Barbara, initially skeptical about the performance, was gradually won over by her grandson's progress. During one of her visits, she watched a full rehearsal and left with tears in her eyes. "Michael, did you see that?" she asked, clearly moved. I did, Mom. Jacob is radiant. He's never seemed so complete. Emily did that for him. Emily did that with him. There's a difference. On the day of the performance, the whole family was nervous. The Lincoln Center was packed, with hundreds of people there to support the participating children. Emily and Jacob were the closing act. They had chosen a classical yet stirring piece, and the choreography told the story of a bird learning to fly in a different way. When they stepped onto the stage, Michael's heart raced. Jacob looked small under the bright lights, but he was smiling with confidence. The music began, and Emily started dancing on her feet, her movements fluid and graceful. Jacob, in his wheelchair, matched her with arm movements that were both strong and delicate. Halfway through, Emily sat on the floor, and the two began dancing at the same level, creating a visual harmony that drew gasps from the audience. The climax came when Jacob pushed himself from his wheelchair onto the floor, supporting himself with his arms and creating movements Michael had never imagined possible. Emily danced beside him, her prosthesis visible, showing how both had turned their limitations into strengths. When the music ended, the theater erupted in applause. Jacob and Emily embraced at center stage, both crying with emotion and joy. Michael stood, clapping and openly weeping. Beside him, Jennifer was equally moved. Catherine and Barbara, seated together, shared tissues and tears. As Jacob and Emily left the stage, they were surrounded by admirers and other participants, children in wheelchairs with canes with prosthetics, all eager to meet the dancers who had shown that art has no limits. Jacob, a girl of about 8 approached. You dance so well. Thank you. Emily taught me. Can you teach me too? Jacob looked at Emily, who nodded encouragingly. Of course. I'll teach you and anyone else who wants to learn. In that moment, Michael realized Jacob was no longer the sad, limited child he had tried to protect. He was a confident boy who wanted to share his joy with the world. Later, at home, as Jacob slept, exhausted but happy, the family gathered in the living room. Today was a special day, Jennifer said. It was the day Jacob showed us all who he really is, Emily added. And the day I finally understood that being a father isn't about protecting your child from their limitations, Michael reflected. It's about helping them turn those limitations into strengths. You learned that from Emily, Catherine observed. She's always known how to turn difficulties into opportunities. I learned from both of them, Michael corrected. Jacob taught me courage, and Emily taught me perseverance. And you all taught me about family, Emily said. I thought it was just me and my mom. Now I've found that family can grow in ways we never imagined. Barbara, who had been quiet, finally spoke. Michael, I owe you an apology. Mom, for decades, I convinced you that love and responsibility were incompatible with success. Today, I saw how wrong I was. Mom, you did what you thought was best at the time. No, I did what was convenient. And because of that, you lost precious years with Emily, and she grew up without a father. Mrs. Barbara, Emily interjected, the past can't be changed, but the present and the future are in our hands. You're a wise woman, Emily, and I'm proud to have you as my granddaughter. Barbara's words marked the final acceptance of Emily into the family. She was no longer the nanny who became a daughter. She was simply Emily Johnson, Jacob's sister and Michael's child. In the months that followed, the family's life took on a new dynamic. Emily developed a therapeutic dance program that began serving other children with special needs. Michael, inspired by his daughter's work, started integrating art therapy techniques into his neurological treatments. He discovered that combining traditional medicine with artistic expression produced surprising results. Jacob became a kind of ambassador for adaptive dance, participating in events and inspiring other children. His infectious joy and determination made him a minor celebrity in the inclusive activities circuit. Jennifer reduced her travels and dedicated more time to managing Emily's program, using her business skills to expand the project. Catherine was officially hired as the program's costume designer, finally able to use her creativity and sewing skills professionally. The Johnson penthouse was partially adapted to serve as the program's headquarters. The terrace where it all began became the main rehearsal space, overlooking a city that now seemed more welcoming and full of possibilities. One Sunday afternoon, 6 months after the performance at the theatre, the family gathered for their weekly lunch. Jacob excitedly talked about a new choreography he was creating with Emily. "Dad, did you see how I nailed that new move?" "I did, son. You're getting better every day." Emily said maybe we could do a big show at the end of the year to showcase everything the kids have learned. "What kind of show?" "A huge performance with all the kids from the program. It'll be at the same theatre where we danced." Michael looked at Emily, who smiled shyly. "It's just an idea for now, but the kids are progressing so much that it would be amazing to give them a big goal to work toward." "I think it's a wonderful idea," Jennifer supported. "Me too," Catherine agreed. "I'm already picturing the costumes." "Then it's settled," Michael announced. "We'll put on the biggest adaptive dance show New York City has ever seen." Jacob cheered in his wheelchair, making celebratory moves that made everyone laugh. "Jacob," Emily said, "do you want to be the show's artistic director?" "What's that?" "It's the person who helps decide how everything will be, the dances, the order, the music." "Really? I can do that?" "Of course. You understand dance and you know what each child does best." The conversation was interrupted by Barbara's arrival. She had become a regular at Sunday lunches. "Grandma!" Jacob greeted her excitedly. "You came just in time. We're planning a huge show." "How wonderful! Tell me all about it." As Jacob explained the plans to his grandmother, Michael watched the scene with a sense of wholeness he hadn't felt in a long time. His family had grown in ways he never imagined, and every person at that table brought something special. Later, when the guests had left and Jacob was resting, Michael and Emily were alone on the terrace where it all began. "Emily, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you forgive me? Not just for firing you, but for all the lost years?" Emily was thoughtful for a moment. "Michael, forgiveness isn't something you give just once. It's something you build every day. Every time you try to be a better father, every time you support my dreams, every time you treat my mother with respect, you're being forgiven. And am I being a better father? You're trying, and that's what matters. I love you, daughter." The words came out naturally, without effort or hesitation. Emily felt her eyes fill with tears. "I love you too, Dad." It was the first time she had called him Dad, and the emotional impact was immense for both of them. "Emily, thank you for not giving up on us. Thank you for giving me such a special brother. Jacob is lucky to have you. We're all lucky to have found each other." They sat in silence for a few minutes, watching the sunset over New York City. The city stretched out before them, full of life and possibilities. "You know what's funny?" Emily remarked. "What?" "If you hadn't fired me that day, maybe we would have never discovered we're family." "How so?" "I probably would have just stayed the nanny. Maybe I never would have found the courage to tell my mom where I was working, and you would have never known who I really was." Michael considered that possibility. "So you're saying my awful behavior ended up being a good thing?" "I'm saying sometimes bad things force us to face truths we'd rather avoid, and facing those truths can lead to something much better than we imagined. You're very wise for someone so young. I learned from my mum. She always said there's no use crying over what we can't change. It's better to focus on what we can build. Catherine is an amazing woman. I was such a fool to lose her." "You didn't lose her. She's here, part of our family now. Maybe not as a wife, but as Jacob's grandmother and your daughter's mother." "That's true. Family can take different shapes than we imagine." "Exactly." Just then, Jacob appeared on the terrace, still a little sleepy. "Can I stay here with you?" "Of course, sweetheart." Emily hugged him as he settled beside her. "What were you talking about?" "About family," Michael answered. "Our family is different, right?" "Why do you say that?" "Because we found each other in a weird way. You didn't know you were father and daughter, and I didn't know Emily was my sister." "And how do you feel about that?" Jacob thought for a moment. "I think it was the right way. If you'd known from the start, maybe you wouldn't have tried so hard to like each other." The simplicity of Jacob's observation left the adults speechless. "What do you mean, Jacob?" Emily asked. "Well, you met as regular people. You liked each other because you wanted to, not because you had to as family." "Jacob's right," Michael admitted. "I fell in love with Emily as my daughter because I saw how much she loved you, not because I found out she was my daughter. And I started liking Michael when I saw him trying to be a better father, not when I found out he was my dad," Emily added. "So our family is special because we chose to love each other," Jacob concluded. "Very special," Michael agreed, hugging both children. The year passed quickly, marked by small victories and great joys. Emily's therapeutic dance program grew beyond all expectations, serving dozens of children and families. Jacob thrived not just physically, but as a leader among the kids in the program. His natural ability to encourage others and his contagious joy made him an inspiration to everyone. Michael discovered a new passion for humanized medicine, blending art and science in innovative ways. His research on the neurological benefits of therapeutic dance began gaining international recognition. Jennifer found in managing the program a way to apply her business skills to a cause that truly mattered. She became the driving force behind the project's expansion and financial sustainability. Catherine flourished as the program's official costume designer, creating pieces that were both functional and beautiful. Her creativity, suppressed by decades of subsistence work, finally had room to shine. Barbara was surprised to discover a new phase in life. At 72, she became an active volunteer for the program, using her experience and wisdom to mentor other families. When December arrived, preparations for the grand performance were in full swing. 25 children would participate, each with their own unique story of overcoming challenges and self-discovery. Jacob, as the junior artistic director, took his role very seriously. He knew every child's abilities and limitations and had helped Emily create choreographies that highlighted the best in each one. "Emily, do you think Lily will be able to do that move we rehearsed?" he asked during one of the final rehearsals. "I'm sure of it. She's practiced hard and is ready." "What about Peter? He's still nervous." "Peter always gets nervous before performances, but once the music starts, he transforms." Jacob nodded, satisfied. His responsibility for the show had visibly matured him. On the day of the performance, the Lincoln Center was packed once again. This time, however, there was media coverage and several notable figures who had taken an interest in the program's innovative work. Backstage, a mix of nerves and excitement filled the air. The children looked stunning in their costumes designed by Catherine, each one thoughtfully crafted to highlight the wearer's personality and abilities. "Everyone gather around." Emily called all the children into a circle before the show. "Remember what we always say. There are no mistakes in dance, only different ways to express yourselves. You're all amazing artists, and today you'll show the world." Emily, one of the youngest children, raised her hand. "What if I forget the steps?" "Then you make up new ones, and it'll be even prettier," Jacob answered before Emily could speak. The other children laughed, visibly relaxing. "Jacob's right," Emily confirmed. "The important thing is to have fun and show the joy you feel when you dance." In the audience, the Johnson family occupied an entire row. Michael was visibly nervous, adjusting his tie repeatedly. "Relax, honey." Jennifer touched his hand. "Jacob will do just fine." "It's not just Jacob. It's all the children. This show means so much to them." "And that's why it'll go perfectly," Catherine reassured. "The love and dedication you've poured into this is evident in every detail." The show began with a group performance, where all the children danced together to a song about dreams and possibilities. The choreography was complex, with different levels and adaptations for each type of mobility. Seeing 25 children dancing in perfect harmony, each in their own way, was pure magic. Some in wheelchairs, others with canes, others with prostheses, all moving as one artistic entity. The solo performances that followed showcased each participant's unique personality. There was a blind girl who danced to music she composed herself, a boy with Down syndrome whose movements blended strength and grace, and a teenage girl with an amputated leg who had created an impressive acrobatic routine. Jacob and Emily performed a special number midway through the show. It was a dance that told the story of a brother and sister finding each other through music, a clear metaphor for their own journey. Their performance was met with a standing ovation that lasted several minutes. When the lights briefly came up, both could see their families in the audience, all in tears from emotion. The grand finale brought all the children back on stage together. The chosen song was John Lennon's Imagine, and the choreography created images of unity, hope, and endless possibilities. When the final note played and the lights went out, the theater erupted in applause that seemed never-ending. The children on stage hugged, cried, and laughed all at once. Flowers were thrown onto the stage, and the audience rose in a standing ovation that lasted over 10 minutes. Children who had started the year hiding behind their parents now waved confidently to the crowd. Backstage, the euphoria was overwhelming. Parents wept, and the children couldn't stop talking about every moment of the performance. "We did it!" Jacob shouted, being lifted into Michael's arms. "You did, and you were perfect," Michael replied, his voice thick with emotion. Emily was surrounded by the children, all wanting to hug and thank her. "Emily, when's the next show?" one of them asked. "Slow down, let's celebrate this one first." But the question planted a seed. There were already plans to expand the program, perhaps even create a permanent adaptive dance company. The after-party was held at the Johnsons' penthouse, which had been decorated to welcome all the participating families. It was a joyful mix of people from different socio-economic backgrounds, united by love for their children and for art. "Michael," one of the parents approached him, "I want to thank you for everything you've done for our daughter. She's never been happier." "All the credit goes to Emily and the kids themselves." "No, the credit belongs to your whole family. You've created something special here." Throughout the party, several people approached Emily with proposals and ideas. There was interest in bringing the program to other cities, making a documentary, and developing methodologies that could be replicated. "Emily, you've become a national figure," Jennifer remarked, watching the commotion around her daughter. "It's surreal. A year ago, I was just a frustrated ballerina who lost her career. Now I'm here, surrounded by possibilities I never imagined." "You didn't lose your career. You found a new one, far more important." "That's true. Today I dance through dozens of children. It's so much more fulfilling than dancing alone." Late that night, when all the guests had left and Jacob finally fell asleep, exhausted but beaming, the immediate family gathered once more on the terrace. "Today was perfect," Jennifer sighed, kicking off her shoes and settling onto the outdoor sofa. "It was the culmination of an incredible year," Michael agreed. "And it's just the beginning," Emily added. "The possibilities are endless now." "Emily, can I ask you something?" Michael said. "Of course. If you could go back in time, would you change anything? The accident, our late discovery, all of it?" Emily thought carefully before answering. "I wouldn't change a thing. The accident taught me resilience and led me to discover my calling as a teacher. Our late discovery let us know each other as people before relating as father and daughter. Jacob grew up with limitations that made him empathetic and determined. But you lost so many years. I didn't lose them. I lived different years. All the years I spent with my mother, learning from her about strength and dignity. All the years I dedicated to ballet, which gave me the technical foundation I use today. Even the painful years after the accident taught me important things." "You're amazing," Jennifer observed. "Your ability to find meaning in any situation is inspiring. I learned it from my mother. She always said life isn't about what happens to us, but how we react to what happens." "Catherine is truly an exceptional woman," Michael admitted. "I was such a fool not to see that when I was young. But you see it now, and that's what matters." The three fell silent, gazing at the city stretched out before them. New York City had never felt so welcoming and full of possibilities. "You know what I learned this year?" Michael said suddenly. "What?" "That family isn't about genetics or blood. It's about choice. I chose to be Emily's father when I took her back. She chose to give me a second chance when she could have rejected me. Jacob chose to love us unconditionally, even when we messed up. And I chose to accept you as my family," Jennifer added. "I could have felt threatened by Emily's arrival, but I chose to see it as a blessing. We've all made brave choices, Emily agreed. "And those choices brought us here." "So where do we go from here?" Michael asked. "We keep choosing to love each other," Emily replied. "Every day, in every situation, we keep supporting each other's dreams. We keep creating opportunities for other families like ours. And we keep dancing." A sleepy little voice joined the conversation. It was Jacob, who had woken up and come looking for them. "Jacob, what are you doing awake?" Michael asked, pulling his son onto his lap. "Couldn't sleep, I was thinking about the show." "And what were you thinking?" "That today was the best day of my life, and I want every day to be like this." "Like what?" "Full of music, dancing, happy people, full of family." Emily felt her eyes fill with tears once more. "Jacob, you know not every day can be like today, right? Some days will be hard." "I know, but if we're together, even the hard days will be good." The simplicity and wisdom of the 6-year-old left the adults momentarily speechless. "Jacob's right," Michael finally said. "Together we can face anything." "And dance through any challenge," Emily added. "Our dancing family," Jacob murmured, snuggling into his father's lap. And so, on the terrace where it had all begun with an impulsive resignation, the Johnson family celebrated not just the success of a performance, but the discovery that true love can arise from the most unlikely situations. Michael had learned that being a father wasn't about shielding his children from their limitations, but helping them turn those limitations into strengths. Emily had discovered that having a family didn't depend on growing up with them from the start, but on choosing to build genuine bonds. Jacob had shown them all that authentic joy could overcome any physical obstacle. The dance that had begun as therapy had become a metaphor for life. Sometimes you fall, sometimes you stumble, but you can always get up and keep moving with grace and determination. As the city lights twinkled below and a gentle breeze swayed the terrace curtains, the 4 members of the Johnson family knew they had found something precious. A love born from mutual choice, grown through overcoming challenges, and strengthened in celebrating each other's dreams. The future was full of possibilities, new performances, expanding the program, maybe even a professional adaptive dance company. But for now, it was enough to be there, together, knowing they had created something beautiful from pain and separation. Jacob dozed off in his father's lap, a serene smile on his face. Emily and Jennifer whispered about plans for the next year. Michael watched the daughter he'd found by chance and the son he'd learned to see with new eyes. The next morning, life would return to its normal routine. There would be work, school, therapies, rehearsals, but everything would be different now, colored by the certainty that they belonged to each other, not out of obligation or convenience, but by choice and genuine love. The story that had begun with rejection and misunderstandings had transformed into a saga of redemption, forgiveness, and discovery. It proved that it's never too late to right the wrongs of the past, and that the strongest families are those forged through adversity, overcome together. And on the terrace, where an unfair dismissal had nearly destroyed everything, now grew a garden of endless possibilities, nurtured by the love that chooses to bloom, even in the most unlikely conditions. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of this story of resilience and family. Do you believe Michael made the right choices in the end? What lessons did this journey bring to your own life? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear what touched your heart in this narrative. Don't forget to leave a like if the story moved you, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel so you won't miss other heartwarming tales.